Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial video on the Tournament Pairing Program software version. In this segment we'll be focusing on flights, how to create them, and a few options that you'll be able to use them for aside from just scoring, including how to make some pairings with some flights as well. We've had a couple of other videos posted. One goes through an entire setup of an event for a four-person scramble, another for an individual event where we've got golfers using different tees. In this video, we're not going to go through every step. I've done some pre-work here. We're just going to really focus more on the flights. I have 41 players in an event. It's a 2-round event, 18 holes per day, and I have no flights created at this time. I've created pairings for round 1. Just did a random creation of pairings. They're playing in threesomes and foursomes from 8 o'clock to 9:40. And I have already done the scoring for each group except the last group to come in after round 1. So we can see here I've been collecting scores as each group comes in, 8:20, 8:30. I'm down to my 9:40 group. The last group is in. They're handing me their scorecards. I'm going to go ahead and enter some scores for these golfers. I'll go ahead and close this, and now we have round 1 in the books in terms of collecting all of our scores from the players. We could go ahead to a report menu and take a look at how our standings look after round 1. I'll do single round scoring, and I'm choosing player because we don't have any flights created just yet. And I'm just going to choose a standard gross summary board. All I want to know is the number that each participant posted for round 1. We can take a look at this. And we see our scores range from 67 to 82. Okay. So now let's say after round 1, in terms of our competition is we will flight this into 3 flights as evenly as we can here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to flights, create/remove flights by players. In the creation of flights, I am going to choose the manual creation of flights option and change the number of flights to 3. When I click build, the flight management screen opens up, and you can see that I have all my players over here on the left because I did choose the manual creation, so I have to put them in the flights that I want them to be in. And we can see a drop down here. I am currently showing flight 1 on the left box and flight 2 on the right box. No players in there right now, just gray screens. And by the drop down I can change and show flight 3 as well. So at any time you're always going to see 2 of your flights. If you have 8 or 9, you'll see all of the flights in the drop down here, so you can always toggle and show 2 of the flights on your screen. I'm going to go to the top left, and you'll see a show with a drop down and a lot of options here. Right now it's showing entry number, so that's the number next to each player on the left side of their name. I'm not as concerned about their entry number right now. I'd like to show their sum of the gross score for round 1, and I'll say OK to that. And now I can see my players are sorted from top to bottom. Best scores at the top, and then our higher scores down at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and click on our low score of the day, hold the shift key down and arrow down, and I'm going to take everybody through 75, right click on this, and I can move it to one of the selected flights I have appearing on the right. I'll move them to flight 1. Then I'll take my 76s and 77s, right click that, move them to flight 3. At this time I'm going to rename the flights before I move the last group of players in there. Flight 1, I know those are my best scores. I'm going to rename this Championship. And I know this is the group of the second best scores, my 76s and 77s, so I'll rename that. This can be first flight. Now obviously the players that shot 78 to 82 need to be in my second flight. So I'm going to go ahead and rename the flight we're not using to second flight. Since that's visible as one of my flights on the screen, I will have the option of right-clicking and moving them to the second flight. The other way you could move players, a player or players into a flight would be by clicking on the name and dragging them and dropping them at the insert here portion of each flight, just like that. So we could move players individually, like that. It is quicker if you're moving multiple players to hold the shift key down, like that, right click, move to the second flight. Now we have each player in a flight. We can say OK to that. And now we're ready to go ahead and just create our pairings and send them out for the conclusion of our stroke play event in round 2. And I'm just going to do another random pairings for round 2. As I said, we're not focused on pairings in this video. So I'll just do something real quick, get them out on the course. Pairing management, I can see that I have round 2 pairings that open up there. There's my round 1. I can go back to round 2. I could even do in the show here, right now it's showing entry number for the number behind their name, but I could change this to sum of gross score, round 1, and then you'd see the score that they shot following their name. Now I did a random pairing method for round 2, so there's no rhyme or reason to who's playing with each other. We can have a group, our final group of the day features players who shot 76, 73, and 81. We could go ahead and move these around a little bit if I said I want the lower scores to play, but like I said, we're not focused too much on our pairings right now. We just want to get out and create our scores for round 2. And to save time, I'm going to go ahead and auto score round 2. And now our competition is closed. We have all 36 holes in the book, so let's go to the report menu and see how the standings turned out. I'm going to select the scoring folder. I want a multiple round result, and now I need to choose the player flighted folder because we are going to be running the reports based on the flights. There is a gross 2-round grid. The preview looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and run that. I have both rounds selected. So we'll say OK and see the report. And you can see here I've got 3 pages in this report. The title of the first page, Gross Scores for Championship. That's reading from the flight we created. So Sam Sneed's our overall winner. Score 69.73 for a 142. We have 13 total players in this championship flight. If we use the arrow at the top to see the next page, we'll see a page break and it goes into our second flight. We have 1 through 12 there in our second flight. And then I can flip through the next one and here's our first flight. And so we can see that it kept the competitions within each flight, ranking them 1 through down to the bottom for each flight. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close our report. Okay, so there's an example of running a 2-day event, 36 holes, and after 1 day of play, we then create our flights based on scores. The players stay within those flights for the remainder of the competition. I have taken the time to remove all scores in rounds 1 and 2, and I'm going to now remove the flights that we've created, and we're going to take a look at a second scenario. So to remove the flights, I'm going to go to the same string, flights, create remove flights by players, and there's a remove flights button. It will ask me if I would like to remove the flights. I click yes, I get a notification that the flights have been removed. I'm going to go ahead and remove all our pairings as well. Remove stroke play pairings for all rounds and say OK. So now we're back to where we were at the beginning of the video. We have a 2-round, 18 holes per round event set up, and we have 41 players in, but we have no flights created and we have no scores. In this scenario, I'm going to have flights set up before they begin play. We can think of them as divisions. And in earlier videos that you may have watched, you might have remembered me talking about the numeric sort sequence. When I put the players in, I assigned each player a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And that shows up when showing the numeric sort sequence. It's a field I'm using here. So while Ernie is a 1, and Jack Fleck's a 4, and Lucas Glover's a 2, I can sort these players quickly by that, and it's just a behind-the-scenes code for me. I know what division they're in based on the number code I've given them. That's not going to show in any reporting or anything, it's just for us on the administrative side. So let's pretend that we have 4 divisions within this event. And before we begin, I'm going to create the flights by players. And I'm going to, again, change it to manual creation of flights. That's the way I prefer to do it here. And I know I want 4 flights because I'm going to have 4 divisions in this event. I'll build it. I'm going to rename my flights. As you can see right now, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to call this the A flight. For our purpose, we'll call them divisions by name. A division, B division. We'll rename 3 and 4 as well. Okay, so we've renamed the 4 flights we've created, and I'll bring back flights 1 and 2 to show in this window here. I am going to show the numeric sort sequence so I can easily see who is in what division of our event. And I'll select all the 1s, right click, and I'll move them to the A division. I'm going to select all the 2s, move them to the B division. And then we're done with the A and B division, so let's bring the C and D division to the front and move our 3s to the C, and finally our 4s to the D division. And like I showed you earlier, we can do a little bit of moving around. If we found out that Billy actually was supposed to be in the C division when he signed up and we improperly put a sort sequence number for him there, I could just click on him and drag him to the appropriate flight, and then he'd be in there. And it wouldn't matter that it's all 3s and 1, 4, because this sort sequence field is just shown on the administrative sign behind the scenes, so it wouldn't affect anything. So we'll leave it at that way. I'll go ahead and click OK at the bottom. In the first example in this video, when I created pairings, I created them randomly. I'll continue with the random pairing method, but I'm going to do it by flights now. So in the flight group, instead of none, I'm going to change it to flights of players. 8 a.m. off the first tee is fine. And then I'm going to go over to the flight options, and I'm going to say flight individually. What that allows me to do is click this Select Flights button down at the bottom, and I'm going to move the A and the B division flight over and say OK. So now I am just flighting for flights A and B. They'll start at 8 o'clock on 10-minute intervals in groups of 4. I'm going to say build, and it tells me that 6 groups have been created. I'll say OK. I'm going to go back to the Create Stroke Play Pairings and do the same thing, except I'm going to select the flights. I'm going to move A and B over because we've already created the flights for, or the pairings for them, and we'll do C and D. 8 o'clock is fine, but I know the first tee is now busy at 8 o'clock because I've got my A and B divisions over there, so I'm going to move the C and D divisions to the 10th tee with all other settings being the same, and I'll build those. So now I can go to my pairing management, and instead of showing entry number, I'm going to show our sort sequence. We can see I'm in the flight of A and B. I'll select that one. So my AB division has players off the first tee at 8 o'clock going up to 8:50, and by showing the sort sequence, we can see that they're all 1s and 2s in this group here. My 1s and 2s, as you can see from the sort sequence there. And then if I'd use the drop down in the flights, I can move over to the C and D division. They start at 8 o'clock on T10 and go to 8:50 as well. If I change what I'm showing there, numeric sort sequence, you'll see that they're all 3s and 4s, and that's correct. That's the code I used. A for 1, 2 for B, 3 for C, and 4 for D. So things look good there. Let's go ahead and score the event for round 1. Again, I'll use my auto fresh or my auto score feature. Quickly give us round 1 scores for the players. I can close and go to report menu and see how our players did. Scoring, single round, player flighted. I'm going to choose a gross summary board for this report. And we can see a nice clean summary board divided by our divisions, A, B, C, and D. We created 4 flights and we named them divisions, so we can see how they did. And they'll go out for round 2 and they'll stay within their divisions for our results when we run our reports after they've played their 36 holes. Go ahead and close this. That concludes this tutorial on flights. We showed you a couple of different options. You can flight after a round is in the books, or you can flight before the event even begins. Think of it as divisions in that way. If you have any questions about an event at your club where you'll like to create flights or divisions, please feel free to contact the IGA.